Hello and welcome to this episode of Microchips. In this episode we will be upgrading my PC's processor from a Ryzen 1700 to a brand new Series 5000 processor. But there's a few steps that we have to go through to achieve this. Now I've noticed there's been a few posts here and there about BIOS update failure. Well, there's a way around that and it's quite easy. But anyway, this is a processor that was in my machine. It's a Ryzen 7 1700X and we're upgrading to a Ryzen 9 5900X, which should be an absolutely huge improvement over the first generation processor that's in there now. And we're also popping in a little bit of SSD storage as well, which should help a few bottlenecks. But first thing we need to do, we need to find our BIOS switch, because the Gigabyte board has got two BIOSes, and for this we need to flash both BIOSes because you don't want to be stuck on an older BIOS should your main BIOS actually fail. So as you can see, the BIOS version is F2 on this one. It's a really old version. Now there's a few steps we need to go through to update this BIOS. So according to the Gigabyte page, we need to update to F31 first. That adds some Q-Flash capabilities. So that's flashing away nicely, and after a few minutes the machine reboots and hopefully it comes back on. But if it doesn't, we have got a dual BIOS anyway, which we can switch in. And it's come on. If we go to Q-Flash again, we are now on F31. So now from F31 we need to go to F40, but we also need to make sure we've updated our motherboard chipset drivers as well. So we'll let this flash. If you just go from like the F2 BIOS all the way up to the latest one, it will fail and will not let you flash. You must go through these steps. So we did quick load optimize defaults and restart. And back into the BIOS page again. And back onto Q-Flash again. Now we're on F40. Now from F40 we can jump straight to the latest, which at this time of recording is 51G. The 51 BIOS actually adds compatibility for this new processor, so it's an absolute must. And it's an absolute must that we flash both BIOSes. So after yet another restart, go back into the BIOS utility, do a load optimize defaults, and as you could quickly see there, it said F51G. So now we need to enable our XMP profile for the memory, and I don't think there's much more that we need to mess about with at the moment. Just check the boot sequence. But now we're on F51G, being the latest BIOS and compatibility for this new 5900 processor. So once that's working, we've switched the BIOS back, and then we have to go through the process all again to update the BIOS on the main and backup BIOSes. So this is the inside of my PC case. As you can see, there's a closed loop water cooler in there. So first things, I need to slacken the retaining nuts. Now this chip has never been out since I installed it on this board, so the thermal paste is probably going to be a little bit hard. So we'll just go through and undo all the retaining nuts and put them away safely. And that's all the 4 retaining nuts taken off. Now what we're going to do is we're going to wiggle the cooler from side to side, and as you can see there, it breaks the contact with the thermal paste, because we don't want to be pulling this out with the CPU still attached to it and risk bending pins or damage to the socket. So now we can carefully lift away our cooler unit, or should we say the pump, disconnect the power to the pump, and carefully put this to one side. And there's our processor covered in thermal paste. So with a little bit of ISO and a bit of tissue and a cloth, we clean away all the old thermal paste. Get ready to put this processor back in its packaging. So we'll lift the retaining latch, now the processor is loose, and carefully lift the processor out of the socket and place it into its holder similar to this. Now here is our new processor. Carefully opening the package so it doesn't jump out. Making sure the latch is open. Take our processor, drop it into the socket and close the retaining latch, and that's the processor in its socket and secure with no bent pins. So quick clean of the surface. Now we're going to apply some thermal compound. So this is Arctic MX4 thermal compound that was nicely supplied with the processor. So I know there's a lot of conflicting ways of doing this, but I think the best bet is a nice blob in the middle, a couple of blobs on the outside, and then we can work it in. So there's a nice P-shaped blob in the middle. Before we put it back into place, we need to remove the old compound from the CPU heatsink, or should we say the heat transfer. So again, a little bit of ISO, bit of a tissue, bit of a cloth. Carefully wipe away all the old compound so the surface is clean and flat and no foreign objects on there. There, nice and shiny, nice and clean. Now we carefully offer up the pump to its mounting lugs. Put it into place, apply a little bit of pressure, give it a wiggle round to spread the thermal compound, and then we'll let the pressure of the nuts actually spread it further. So we'll start putting on our retaining nuts. First off, we just want to get them on and just barely finger tight, and then we're going to tighten them up gradually, going from corner to opposite corner, just like you would do if you were tightening a cylinder head on a vehicle. So I'm just putting these on barely finger tight. As you can see, it still moves, so we'll get it lined up, get it level, and then start to tighten up. Now we do this as a gradual process, going from corner to corner. I'm not tightening them up fully, I'm just putting a little bit of tension on them. Mustn't forget to reconnect the CPU pump power supply. As you can see, it's still loose. So again, we go back round and we tighten up. You'll see the importance of why this is necessary in a sec. So now we're going for its maximum tightness. You can't over tighten it due to the thread length, but we want to make sure that it's actually, you see that one then must have been stuck on the thread, and want a little bit of pressure allowed us to tighten up a bit further, which then slacken the top one off. So you see, very important we do this methodically and make sure that they're all nice and tight, but not absolutely over tightened, just so they don't move anymore. There, nice and secure. So that's our processor installed. Now for the SSD. So we'll put a new power cable into this modular supply. This Cooler Master case has a nice place to put these drives, so we'll cable it up, cable managed around the back, and place this drive into place. Nice and tidy. So quick clean up, get rid of the fingerprints, and we're done. So after a lot of restarts and a lot of restarts, the machine finally come on and we were able to run some benchmarks. So there's before and after the OpenGL, before 86, after 207, CPU score 1328, and after 3260. So an absolute massive jump in performance. So overall, very happy. So that's it for this video. That's how to upgrade your Gigabyte GA-AX370-Gaming K7 motherboard with a new processor. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.